How did I get involved with this? Back in 1986, I knew a farmer that was being wheeled into the hospital room for his operation for bypass surgery. The last thing he said to his wife was, "If I don't make it out of this, just promise me you won't sell the farm." Now, I know that man very well. He's still alive today. He's 91. He's in a wheelchair and can't get around very well. And he's being critical of his kids that are helping run his Christmas trees because they aren't planting the right variety of trees that he thinks that they're going to plant this year and harvest in another 7 years. Now, that old farmer's my dad. He doesn't consider himself retired yet. He is very much into the farm, and he's got a sharp mind yet. And I've learned a lot from him over the years. And a lot of this is this practical stuff that we're going to be doing here. Okay, where do you start at this whole thing? Well, you got to get a start, and you got to start at the beginning. And that is that first step that you're going to do, and you made a good first step by coming here today. You got to get started, you got to talk about this, and you got to get moving. Why are we even concerned about this? You know, the age of the typical farmer is getting older. We're approaching the typical age of 60. The average age. Do you know what we have? Farmers are living longer. We're all living longer. We have people living into their 90s, and they're still capable of doing things yet. We have grandmothers at age 90 running marathons. Gee, what are we going to do here? But you know, we have more farmers over age 65 than under 35. How many farmers here today are under age 35? I won't ask you how old you are. I'll assume most of you are older than 35. Okay, do you realize that the farmers that are over age 65 own nearly 50% of the farm assets in this country? Now, if we do a little rapid mathematics and new math and old math, it tells us that, you know, most of those farm assets are going to be changed or turned over in the next 25 years. Maybe we ought to do a little planning about that. Who's going to be our next generation of farmers? And you know, the studies show the majority of farmers, they don't plan to retire. Okay, well, maybe we ought to be thinking, how do we go about some of this stuff? Okay, I hit the wrong button there. Wait, why isn't we advancing here? There we go. We got farmland. We got more absentee farmland owners across the country. We're making efforts. We want to preserve more farmland, keep the farmland open. We want to preserve some of these open spaces. The best way to do that is to have active, profitable farms run by profitable farmers who are running that ground. And you know, land's expensive. Do you realize the farmer told me last spring that land is getting so outrageous up around Newport, Vermont, he had to pay nearly $3,000 an acre for a neighboring farm.
Wow.
Wow, you guys are just overwhelmed by that, aren't you? My understanding is in Vermont, or in New Jersey, $3,000 in some places might buy you a square foot. That is if you get it on a discount, right? Okay, but as Will Rogers said, buy land, they ain't making any more of it. Okay, other trends. You know, we have a lot of young people in this country that want to farm. It may be just a little bit of vegetables. They want to get into some of this stuff, but how the heck are they going to get it? Farmland's expensive. They don't have any assets or credit. Maybe that hasn't changed. One thing my dad told me, he started farming in 1950, and you know one of the reasons he had problems getting started in farming? He didn't have any credit, he didn't have any money, and farmland was too expensive. Maybe that hasn't changed. But we have a lot of people from non-farm backgrounds that want to get into this farming business. But you know, even our farm kids, they can't get into the farm business. How do you ever get credit? How do they ever get any money? They can't buy out mom and dad. Not only things are no expensive, they've been working for peanuts. So we have to make plans to get them into it. How are we going to get them in there on this farmland? Now, let's start off with usually the most typical farm transfer plans. Some of you might know a neighbor that used one of these plans. It's a no-plan plan. The farmer isn't planning to die. You know, see, that's a good way to use this, right? Yeah. Whoops, what am I doing here? There. Not going to, some of them are going to take the farm with them.
Yep.
Strange inheritance.
Most people intend to go out farming. When are you going to retire? When they carry me out of here in a box. And most of them have made no plans or wills. And maybe the idea is we'll just let the creditors and the family fight over what's left. Do any of you know somebody that has that estate planning?
That has had it?
What's that?
Did you say?
Do you know of anybody that might have used that plan or is using that plan today? No, don't think of yourself. I know one in this room would have that. Okay. Then there's the other, I'm going to do something someday plan. Okay. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Don't worry. And this is what we tell the younger generation. Don't worry. Someday this is going to be all yours. You don't have to worry about a thing. I'll fair mares. I'll take care of them. And this is the thing goes, I would never leave my kids in a mess like the Smith family. Not me. It ain't going to happen here. And the big part of this plan is nothing is ever written down, is nothing ever completed, and it's just a bunch of hot air. Someone dies and the will's made, and the will was made out 40 years ago, and we have trustees named for all the kids that are now in their 40s and 50s. Okay. Now, then there's the other, I did it, so you can plan too. You're on your own. Borrow and buy like we did. So it's the can theory. You borrow as much money as you can, as young as you can, to buy as much land as you can, so you can work as hard as you can for as long as you can, to pay back as much as you can, while you live as poor as you can, so you can die as rich as you can. I've never quite figured out, do those that die with the most land, do they win? They may have thought they did. We don't know. Okay, when you then take a look at these plans, I'm joking. I used the wrong thing here. This is what usually ends up happening. These plans are great. Any attorneys here today? They love the plans that most farmers make for their states. Provides employment for attorneys. Your accountants, boy, they love this too. Boy, straightening out an estate and establishing basis and stuff keeps them busy. And then we have Uncle Sam. Someone said here about sending a check to the state and you didn't even get a thank you card back. Okay, and your kids and grandkids wonder, Dad said he was going to, Grandpap said he had it all planned out. And what am I hitting here? Too many buttons. So if you don't want one of these plans, you're going to have to do something about it. Because if you aren't making plans for someone else to take over the farm, that means you're making plans for no one to take over the farm, and the farm's going to be sold out. Think about that. If you're not making a plan for someone to take over, that means you are making a plan for it to be sold to the highest bidder, and then it's going to end up in the family. Personally, that first guy that has no plan, and I've seen this in different farms, I think the family is a lot better off dealing with a patriarch or matriarch that says, this is mine. I'm going to be boss until I'm here. If you want to work here, you're going to work for peanuts, and you're not going to have any authority. And whenever I'm carried out in a cold box in my boots, I'm going to leave it to everybody, and it's going to be cut up equally. That person has already told the family where they stand and what they're going to get. At least the family knows. That second one on there, they're going to do something someday plan, that's fraud. I've known of too many people that have grown up on the farm being told it's going to be theirs. They're making the money for mom and dad, all the net worth accrues to mom and dad, and when mom and dad die, they get their equal share, 1/6. That's fraud in my book. Anyway, I'll throw a opinion here. So, let's talk here about some financial needs of the farms. We have the financial needs of the younger generation, the older generation, there's the farm business, and let's cover a little bit in taxes here while we're at it. Okay, now, let's get here. What do you need money for? The older generation, you need money to live. Well, that's no different than the younger generation. They need money to live too. But you need money to pay off debts. You're running the business. Whoops, health costs. Let's forget about that. That's one of those things we want to talk about. Potential taxes, and most people want to leave some inheritance for their heirs. What would most farmers like to do? They'd like to have a profitable business. They've been working at it for 40, 50 years. Most people want to keep farming as long as they want. There are some of you that know people that are farming because they have to. There's a difference between farming if you have to, because you have to make something of a living, and farming because that's what you like doing. The big difference there. You want to provide security in your elderly years, which dollar signs. You want something back up. You want to help the next generation take over, and you want to treat heirs fairly. And you want to minimize the estate taxes and settlements. We don't want to be paying everything to the attorneys and accountants. And we also hope that World War III doesn't break out and we die with everyone fighting over our estate. All right, but let's take a list some later life questions for people. Where are you going to live? How much do you need to live on? What will be your sources of income? Where's the money coming from? What about your family relations? What about health care? And here's what often happens with most farmers. They've been investing in what all these years? Land, buildings, equipment, livestock possibly, other production assets, and how much was put away for retirement savings?
Very little.
Nice big egg. And you decide, maybe I'm going to retire. Where's the income going to come from? It's like the guy that spent everything and didn't make any retirement plans. Okay, retirement. What is retirement? Well, everybody here under this definition will retire at some point. It's a planned or unplanned departure from the farm business. You may not plan to retire, but I will almost guarantee everybody here that's in a farm business one day will leave your farm business. Except for those of you that are using the not going to die plan. You will depart that farm business, and it will either be planned or unplanned. And we've done studies, and it's done across the country and around the world. We've never identified somebody yet that's taken the farm with them. So unless you're more innovative than some other people, you may want to think of another type of plan. So, okay, where are you going to live? On or off the farm? Do you realize how important the farmhouse is sometimes? I've worked with farmers where the farm transition, even though they're transferring management and ownership, really didn't take effect until the parents moved out of the home farmhouse. That's headquarters. That's where the business is operated out of. Talked to one family 2 years ago. He goes, they finally figured out what it took to get the son into full management of the farm. He lived 1.5 miles away and was coming there to the barn. Whenever salesmen came or service people came, where did they go? They went to the farmhouse. That was Dad's house. Who was checking the cows at 3 o'clock in the morning? Dad was. They switched houses. Now son lives on the farm, and he has taken over more control as well as the ownership now responsibilities because he lives at the farm site. The control of headquarters. Think about that. What is that important about? And as our older people get older, guess what? Where are we going to live? Are we going to live in the same house? Are we going to move to a house that maybe has less steps? Maybe we have just one level? Are we going to winter in the south? Where's south at? I guess Cape May? That's south if you're in Vermont. Okay. Are you going to move in with the kids? Well, point well taken. Okay, what if health care is needed? Okay, but before you retire, think about how much do you need to live off of? How much do you live off of now? Does anyone know what you need to live off of? Does everybody here know what you spent last year for family living costs? Does anybody know what you spent for family living costs? I'll make one statement. I know the women will agree on this. Men haven't got a clue what yes. This woman is clear and distinct. Men haven't got a clue what family living expenses are. I have worked with a lot of farm men. They can tell you, it goes, I spent on putting this crop last year, it's between $2.63 and $2.64 per unit. Ask them what their family living cost is. If they can guess within $30,000, you're lucky. They don't know. So, most people need about 90 to 100% of your current living costs. I read last week it costs $80,000 for a family of 4 for cash living needs. Maybe you need more here. Well, how much are you going to be if you retire? You need somewhere about 90 to 100%. You throw in life expectancy, and then you know whether people like it or not, but there's a lot of things that fall under farm expenses that still are going to occur after you leave the farm. So that falls in there. So where's this income going to come from? Okay, this is kind of a duplicate side. We need that 90 to 120%. Factor in life expectancy. So even if we use a nice figure like 60,000, 3% inflation, what do we need in 10 years? We need 78,000. 20 years, 105,000. And then, I know you'll probably agree with this one too. You know, sometimes men think they're pretty smart, but they're actually pretty dumb. What do? Well, for one thing, men go and marry younger women. It works, except for when it comes to retiring. Now, I'm one of those smart men too. I have a PhD, so I married a wife that was 9 years younger than I was. It took that long to find someone that was willing to marry me. Okay. When I start retiring, if I'm starting to retire and I go, well, I think I need enough income that I'm going to last for 25 more years. Well, wait a minute. My wife's 9 years younger. And statistics tell us that she's going to live 7 years longer. That added just 15 more years to how long I expect money to live. 105,000 in 20 years? Now, what would that be in 35 years? 150,000? Where's that money going to come from?
Another husband.
Another husband. Now, yes, if she's smart, she'll marry another husband who has more money. But think about that and how that has to factor into how much money you need in your income. It's a big factor to think about. So where's this income going to come from? Well, Social Security. Most of you have probably taken the farmer's oath.
Don't pay income taxes.
He is willing to expose that. You remember that farmer's oath? On the blood of my grandchildren, I swear I will never pay more than $1 in income tax on my Schedule F than I have to. What will I do? I will buy equipment and depreciate it. I will use pre-purchases to keep my income down. And in all my lifetime, I swear I will never pay any federal income tax for my Schedule F. And then when I turn 65, I will be shocked and dismayed that I only get the minimum of Social Security. That's why most farmers don't get Social Security. You spent 40 years trying to make sure you never paid in, and then you find out we're never going to get anything back. But since everyone's already trying to keep their income down, where'd they put that money? They put it in retirement savings accounts, right? Everyone's laughing. Well, anyway, I'll let Barbara handle more of that this afternoon. Okay, investments. IRAs, stocks, savings. Well, when you say stocks to most farmers, livestock. Yep, I got that. They've invested in farm assets, but are those farm assets producing income? Spousal income. Now that is a good thing. Does your wife have 2 jobs or just 1? That's what it takes. And we've done this thing with farm workshops. How do you get more income in the farm? Well, I guess I'm going to have to get my wife to have a second job. But a lot of times, and what we find is that this thing of spouses that have worked off the farm is really the retirement plan because they maybe have a pension that they're contributing to. Huge benefit to a lot of people. Most of it, though, is going to have to come from the farm income or farm assets. And how do you get it from farm assets? You have to sell them. Somebody. Okay, farm income sources. Well, are you going to continue? If you continue operating the farm, you got farm income coming in. Is that going to be your plan? How does it fit into a transition plan? Maybe you're going to be a partner with the younger generation, kind of phase out slowly and pull in money from them. Maybe you're going to be a laborer. You rent the farmland. Let the young generation rent it from you and you can still go over and do whatever you want. Do you have to sell the farm property? That's what a lot of farmers have to do. And you have to sell it to the next generation. But can the next generation afford it? Tax implications. Whoops, when we start selling farm property, we got capital gains tax. Now you seem to think about, well, how this fits into retirement. One guy told me, he goes, his vision of retirement. He said, I'll tell you what it was like farming. I'm out operating, my son's out operating the equipment. He breaks something and he brings it in, parks it by the shop, and goes, Dad, it needs fixed. I broke something. I need to go to a social thing, so I'll see you later. His idea of retirement is, he's out operating the equipment he wants, and when it breaks, he comes and parks it at the shop and tells his son, it needs fixed, it's broke, you fix it, I'm going home for lunch. That is retirement for some farmers. But we have to have a younger generation in there. Can the farm afford to pay you? Family relationships. Can your children help you with help assist? Will they help you provide household needs? It's one of the advantages of having a family farm and having family members involved. Someone lives close by. You need even just some physical assistance. Someone's there to help. It's a lot easier than whenever your kids live in one in California and one in Canada and the other one's in New Zealand. Can they help you with kids? But ultimately, will you live with your kids, but be kind to them because they're going to be the ones that's going to pick your nursing home. Okay, another big concern with health care. A lot of people are fear of losing the farm due to nursing care. The number one best plan is die before you need long-term care. That's a great plan. Other than having someone shoot you, I haven't figured out how you do it yet. Okay? But long-term care insurance is expensive. All these things are a really major concern of how you get into this. Okay, Medicaid requirements. If you're going to have Medicaid, you've got to get rid of your assets to qualify for Medicaid. You got to gift it, or you have to be poverty-stricken to qualify for Medicaid. So you end up with farmers who have no cash and are sitting on real estate worth millions of dollars. And how do you balance that out with Medicaid? It's a very complex, it matters per state, and the rules are constantly changing. So if you're making plans and calculating on how Medicaid would fit in case you need to go to a nursing home, make sure that you meet with an elder care attorney that knows the Medicaid rules. Don't go transferring property out without talking to an attorney first. Okay, financial needs of the younger generation. Do they need any money to live off of? They need some cash. Where are they going to get it? I know, we promised them someday this will all be yours. Does that give them cash to live off of? Well, if they're smart, they have a good spouse that's working at a good off-farm job. Boy, that way we don't have to pay son or daughter any money very much if they're living from off-farm income. Where are they going to live? There's a lot of farms that don't have housing available on the farm. And housing problems can cause another problem. One farm I talked to in Vermont, and the mother, she thinks she solved the problem where she saw was butting up. She said whenever she got married to the farm and there was always interaction, every time she wanted to even hammer a nail into the kitchen, her mother-in-law had a fit. Why? That house was good enough for her, it ought to be good enough for her daughter-in-law. Well, now that she's the mother, and she has two different daughter-in-laws and two sons that are living on houses on neighboring farms that they've acquired over the years, he said, boy, there's a difference between these two daughter-in-laws. One wants to have everything new, and the other one would be happy if she had an air, just kind of a less ventilated chicken house. And she said, that one that needs everything new, that's going to cause a lot of problems. So she and her husband got together. They gave deeded off 10 acres for each of the two sons that they would own by themselves. And now they get a housing allowance from the farm income, and it's the same amount. If one wants to build a $200,000 house and the other wants to build $100,000, that's up to them. But she decided she was not going to get into this thing where the farm was going to be paying for a different lifestyle for one son as compared to the other. She said that was going to cause problems down the road. Okay, what do we need for the younger generation? Even these figures probably a little low. If they come home and they're still living with mom and dad, mom's doing the cooking and the cleaning. A lot of young people do that. They come home to the farm. How much do they need? Well, need $30,000 maybe. If they get married, they're going to need at least $40,000 as long as they have a spouse that has a good off-farm job. Whoops, start a family. There's the end of the off-farm job. Do you know that many farm families qualify for food stamps? You're producing the food for this country that has the lowest priced food of anywhere in the world, and our farmers qualify for food stamps. Now, can someone explain that to me? May not make much sense. Okay, but how do you ever expect these kids to ever move into an ownership position if they're not earning money? Because they're not going to be able to buy it if they don't get some money or get some equity somewhere. Okay, needs of the younger generation, income, they want an opportunity. You know, one of the quotes up there that they had was, son come up and he said, when are you going to give me the farm? I disagree with that quote a little bit. I don't think kids should have the expectation they're going to be given the farm. And most farm kids I know don't want to have the farm given to them, and they don't expect the farm to be given to them. But one of the things they would like, if they're staying home to help in the farm, they would like the opportunity to build equity in the farm business through gifting or build sweat equity or something. They want the opportunity to get into the farm business. A lot of them aren't asking you to hand everything over to them and get the hell out of the road. They're asking for an opportunity to be part of the farm business because they don't have the cash and they won't have the cash. Needs of the farm business. What are you going to do with farm business? You know, farm businesses need money. They have to make money. Current ratio of 2.1. What the heck's that? Banks like to see you having twice the amount of operating capital that you might need for expenses. They want you to have cash on hand to operate. Most farm businesses invest in their crops or whatever they're growing and don't get the money until 6 to 9 months later. You guys already do one hell of a job managing things, but you need cash to operate on. Do you realize farms should increase by at least 30% every 5 years just to stay even? You know, the crowd yesterday claimed that they've never seen parts go down, John Deere parts. And then they turn around and they also said that they've never known real estate taxes to go down. Is that true in this part of the state too? Yeah. I came from a farm, these things never go down. So no matter what, your expenses are always creeping up. Family living expenses are going up. If you don't increase your sales, you're going to be in the hole real fast. So we're talking about just staying even. Now, if you want to bring a child into the business, how much do you want to increase their revenue? Let's think about the kid who's going to live with mom and dad. His bedroom's there anyway. Unless you rent it out, you might as well let him in there or her. They want $30,000 a year. How much do you have to increase revenue? Let's assume the profit margin is 10%. Now, no one's profit margin is 10%. I know you're starting to laugh at me already. But if it is 10% and you need to start paying the child $30,000, how much do you have to increase revenue? How much? 300,000. You have to increase your revenue by 300,000 to be able to pay that kid $30,000. And that's why one of the videos up there, you better talk about how much money that child's going to get paid and where that money's coming from before they come back to the farm and not after. Because they're going to have some money. Remember, the soup pot at the dinner table I guess we can always add a little bit more water to it until it's just down to the broth. But if you really want to have a soup, but if we change that soup and make it to a pie, we can always cut smaller pieces. But most of us have the attitude like Lucy on peanuts. I'm willing to let everyone else, I want the same size pie as everyone else, only I want my piece to be a little bit bigger. But when you start cutting that pie and it's 4 pieces, I have a pretty nice piece of pie. When it's 6, I got a lot less. And if we have 8 pieces out of there, I'm not getting much pie. I'm looking for seconds. We keep cutting the pie smaller without making a bigger pie. It's a problem. Oh, shoot. What's going on here? Okay, did I get there? So we have the needs of the farm business. Now, let's talk about taxes a little bit. Now, we have estate taxes. Right now, it's up to $5.3 million. The federal government finally got this, and it's pegged, I think it's actually maybe closer between $5.3 to $5.4 million. For a couple.
Not New Jersey.
Well, I didn't get to New Jersey yet. This is the federal level. If for a couple, you have $10.6 million or $10.7 million before you would have any federal estate tax made. Now, that's probably half the farms in the state of Vermont before you'd have to add them up to get to be worth $10 million. In New Jersey, that's the backfield? So, but federal, you get $10.6 million for a couple before you would owe any federal estate taxes. And that used to be the one that everybody was worried about. Well, now we don't worry about that so much, but we still have, let me get up here, the New Jersey tax. As he said, he sent a check in to New Jersey and they didn't even send him a thank you card. States across the country that have the estate tax have not set it with the federal or keep it because that's where they get a good source of revenue from. So from here in New Jersey with $675,000, what's it take? 2 square feet to have $675,000 worth of land? This is a major challenge of people within the state, and that is try to figure out how you can get your estate down so you're not paying this full of inheritance tax. Another thing that is tied into this is property basis. This term basis comes in, and it comes into a very major part of this, and it comes into estates and one of the things that complicates inheritance. Basis on property, on land, is essentially what you paid for it. And land doesn't appreciate. Now, with land basis, it's pretty much that. Now, why this plays into inheritance? If you were to leave your farm to your kids, and let's say you paid $50,000 for it, and today it's worth $3 million. If you gave it to them today, their basis is $50,000. You give the basis. But if some happens that his house blows up tonight by accident, or he's driving home today and one of the kids was working on the brake lines last night and he hits a brake and there's no brake and he gets killed, accidentally of course, and in his will he leaves the farm to his kids, they get it at a stepped up basis of $3 million, which means they could turn around and sell it and not pay any capital gains tax. But if you were to give it to them and they were to sell it for $3 million, they'd have capital gains of $2,950,000. So there's a real strong incentive to pass land to the next generation through inheritance. The problem is with inheritance is that the younger generation has to wait for the older generation to die. And the younger generation may be ready to retire before the old generation's dead, unless someone was tinkering with his brakes or his house accidentally blows up or something. So there's a real big problem on this property basis thing. We got New Jersey estate taxes. Now here's where the capital gains tax comes in. What if you sell your land to the next generation? You paid $50,000 and now it's worth $3 million, even assuming if the younger generation get credit, or you finance it. you got capital gains tax to pay on that land. And that range can range from 15 to 25%. Okay, so that has to be factored in. So that is enough that causes a lot of people to stop from transferring the farm to the next generation because they want to step up in basis and don't want to pay the capital gains tax. That's one reason a lot of elderly people don't want to transfer the farmland. That's a major hindrance to it. Now, where does earned income tax? If you're filing a Schedule F now, you pay earned income tax and Social Security tax on your Schedule F income. So if you're going to remain farming after you decide you're going to start collecting Social Security, how much earned income, you're still going to have to keep paying Social Security tax if you're going to be running the farm or if you're going to be a partner on the farm. How you get around that? Well, I know, I'll rent the farm and all the equipment and stuff to the next generation, and they'll pay me rent. And I'll go down and do what I want when I want, but I'm not involved with the operation, although I still will give unsolicited advice all the time. And the income would just be rental income. Problem is, the IRS does kind of frown on that, because if they say if you're down there all the time freely giving advice that is more like orders, that means you're still materially involved. So even if you want to collect the rent, you need to back off and stuff from your authority and stuff from the farm so that you would not be considered to be materially involved with the farm. Gift taxes. I'll gift the farm. Well, you can gift up to $5 million of assets in your lifetime. Now, there are annual gifts that you can make every year. That doesn't count toward that $5 million. It's approximately $14,000, and this amount is pegged to inflation, that you can give $14,000 worth of assets or cash or whatever it is to as many people as you want. You could give $14,000 to me if you want to. Now, how does this help with farms? You want to help a farm couple get in with you. You might be your daughter and son-in-law. Well, you want to transfer some assets over to them and get them a chance to build some equity. You can give your daughter $14,000 worth of stuff. You can give your son-in-law $14,000 worth of stuff, although you may think he's worthless and don't want to do that. But she can also give them $14,000 each. So in 1 year, you can give about $56,000 worth of assets. Over a 3-year period, you can give $150,000 worth of assets. It's a good way to get some assets over to the younger generation, tax-free.
Do you have to be tenants in common to do that?
When you're talking about real estate?
Your assets?
No, it doesn't matter how you own it, but you can only give your assets away. You can't give her assets away.
But if you're not tenants in common?
Well, on the real estate, I mean, you have to have some distinguishable share of the real estate.
And so does she.
And if she does too, she'd have to have it. But she could give 14% of the property, especially if you're tenants in common.
Right.
Now, if it's tenants in common with right of survivorship, then you probably need it to change it to tenants in common, but giving real estate is also more complicated, because how do you give $14,000 worth of real estate when they're a chunk of real estate? In that case, what you usually have to do is put the farmland into like an LLC, and then you gift shares of the LLC within the LLC then. That's how you'd have to do that. And any gift taxes are paid by the person making the gift, not by the receiver. Now, there'd only be gift taxes if you gave more than the $5 million, or if on an annual basis you gave more than $14,000.
So there'd be no taxes?
No.
If it's less than jointly $28,000 a year?
Yes.
But you do have to establish a basis from an LLC, is it?
Well, if it's within the LLC, you can give $14,000 worth of shares of the LLC, but it gets a little bit more complicated because you'd have to have work with your accountant to make sure you're identifying what the basis is and how you're determining what that $14,000 value is. But it can be done. And the thing of it is, you can give $14,000 worth. You got 6 kids? Give them all. You got 15 grandchildren? If you've got the cash, you can give $14,000 to every one of your grandchildren. You can give $14,000 to everybody in this room if you felt so generous and we were effective enough to talk you into it. Now, she'd probably think you're nuts and she'd make sure. Yeah, no.
I got it with each child.
Yes, each child. So you can do that as much as you can. Okay. How do we get the property over to other people? Most of the times we do it through inheritance, sales, gifting, or use of insurance. Now, inheriting property, that means you get to keep the property until you die. It's not inherited until after you die. It's through the will. You maintain control until death. And you can change the decision up until death, which could be good, which could be bad, depending on which way you are. The receiver, again, gets a stepped-up basis on market value, but there's disadvantages. If you're the younger generation, you have to wait until the old geezers die. Well, let's think about that in a realistic structure. One, if you're running the business, but mom and dad own the land, can you put a building up on the property? Go to Farm Credit and ask for a loan to put up a building on someone else's property. They'll throw you out the door without opening the door. So unless you get mom and dad to co-sign with you. So it's maybe important that the kids at least own some of the ground or have some say in how it's done so they can keep the business going. The younger generation may be ready to die and they need to be talking about transferring the business over to another generation, and mom and dad are still alive and still going to Florida every year and world grand tours and everything else. People are very healthy into their 90s today. That affects this decision. Okay, wills may not describe much, may not control much of your property. I'll get into that on another slide. Assets can be subject to inheritance tax. One of the problems with mom and dad keeping the farmland, and they decided that 20 years ago in New Jersey, how much would the land have gone up in value in that time, in the last 20 years? Has it gone up a lot here? Yeah, and it screws up the entire planning because of the inflation that occurs with farmland. So it can be complicated. Inflation confounds that whole thing of tax planning. Now, we'll gift it. It's parting control, and it's giving assets away to on-farm or other individuals. You can give up to $5 million lifetime, $14,000 per year. A couple can give $28,000 per year. The advantages, you get it out of your estate. If you're afraid that you're going to be near that $5 million or the $675, you get it out of there. You also transfer any tax obligations. And it's a helpful way for getting the younger generation to start acquiring assets so they can start building equity. So it's a good way to gradually help the younger generation get started. Now the disadvantages. The problem with gifting something is you can't take it back. Do you really honestly want to gift it? Or you intend to keep control of it after you gift it? Okay, you no longer control the asset, you get the basis. And a lot of times we need to recognize the gift through title transfer or written agreement. You give a truck, you have to change the title on it. If you're gifting land, it's hard to gift $14,000 worth of land, so it has to be within the inside structure of usually like an LLC. So gifting things that have titles gets a little complicated. And that's the partial interest. Now, this is maybe the clearest one. Let me go back one side. Outright and direct sales. This is the clearest thing. I'm going to just sell you the farm. It's $2.625 million. You go get a loan. You write me a check. We're done. That's the clearest thing. Only I have to pay taxes on it. And where the hell is he going to get credit for $2.6 million? That's a little bit of a problem. That's why it doesn't happen very often. Installment sales. A lot of times the seller is acting as a lender. They get to spread their income over the years, and we sell it to the younger generation and let them pay interest to mom and dad. Where's that advantage? Well, the mom and dad get income, and they get some sale income coming in from the sale of the asset and also the interest. Because if mom and dad were to sell a farm and they were to slop that money into the bank, what might they get for interest? How much are banks charging you today to keep your money in their bank? There is no interest. There's a couple here that look like they could probably remember back. Some of you remember back in the 1980s when you could actually get 15% interest on a CD?
Yeah.
Well, 20, for a short time, you could get
20%,
20%.
yeah.
10 years.
Now,
It just seems unbelievable that it was there.
do you realize I'm making I think it's 0.1% on my checking account today? So, but why not? Mom and dad can charge 3% interest. That's lower interest than what you're going to get on a commercial loan, and you're helping them out by giving them a little bit higher interest rate. And you do the installment. So that's a thing. But we also have this risk of default and repossession. Okay, we do a farm sale to their children. We have all the lawyers and all the documents and stuff like that. Daughter and son-in-law don't keep up with their payments. They're already 3 months behind, and then they stop sending checks altogether. What are you going to do? Cry. Legally, you can take them to court. Are you going to take your daughter and son-in-law to court? Now remember, this is the daughter that has bore you 3 grandchildren that are the most beautiful children in the world.
Skip a generation.
Skip a generation. But will you take your kids to court?
You have to repossess this.
You would have to do it. And this is where a lot of times we end up with elderly parents that are financing the farm and they're living off of nothing because the kids aren't paying them. That can happen.
New Jersey is a community property state, so what you give to one. Anyway.
But I mean, this is something you have to be thinking about. Are your children trustable? And hopefully we raise children that we can trust. Okay, about a bargain sale. Okay, the property's worth $3 million, you sell it to them for $500,000. The IRS is considering you just gave a gift of $2.5 million. That is underneath the $5 million, so that's no real problem. If it gets over the $5 million, it can cause some problems. Okay, what else? Conservation easements. A lot of people have sold conservation easements to get an influx of cash. You get the sale of the development rights. You get this money, and what you do is forever, never, 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 and forever, nobody can develop that property. It's a great way to provide some funding for retirement, modernizing the facilities, purchasing additional land. And the land must remain in agriculture. I've seen a number of farmers that have done this, and he goes, I sell the development rights on one farm, and they use that money to buy another farm.
Before we move on to conservation easements, you're talking about the value of the land. How do you get an appraiser that is experienced in valuing farm land for all the things that you've mentioned? Who is, good about farmland?
That is a real challenge, and actually probably an appraiser that land trusts or the state uses to appraise the value might be a place to start. But I mean, this is always a challenge, because how do you determine what is the value of the farmland for agriculture versus farmland just for having open land?
Yeah, how do you determine that they know what they're doing,
You probably need to have more than one person doing it.
like hiring?
Hiring someone, yes.
Yeah, you get candidates and you interview them, what's your experience?
You want to find out somebody else, have they ever appraised someone's farmland? And if they haven't done it from somebody that you know that you can double check with them, you go on to someone else.
Is there a website for that?
Probably not.
Okay, now on
Okay.
to conservation easement.
Okay. Okay, now, What are challenges with the easements? Well, you know, forever is a long time, and you only get to do it one time. Some states are coming up with programs that are doing it 100-year easements rather than forever. And some farmers have traded forever just to remodernize their facilities so they can farm for 20 years. Is that a good option? Is that a good decision? That depends on the farmer. You going to use it for retirement? What about the next generation? Well, they've got the farm, let them worry about it. That might be the option. Tax liability. Tax liability, guess right, you're selling land and you're selling part of the value, and if you have a low basis, you're going to have some capital gains tax to pay on that conservation easement sale. Now, if you've got a mortgage on the property, as do most farmers, guess what? That equity that you have in the land is collateral for your loan. And you go into the lender and he goes, oh, I just sold part of your collateral. No, you haven't, because they have a lien on that farm, and without permission, you can't sell it without their approval. And so they're going to take a chunk of it. So they're going to take a chunk of it. Uncle Sam is going to send you a letter. Hey, I heard you just fell into some riches, and congratulations and all that stuff. Now, would you mind sending me a certain part of it? So how much is going to be left? That's one of the things you may want to be double checking with. In the state of Vermont, we had some farms that had silos on top of a hill. Great place to put a cell tower inside the silo, because you don't have to go through local zoning permits. Whoops, some of that land was conservation easements, and it was limited to agricultural use. Cell towers are not, that's not an agricultural use, so they were kept from getting an income that could make that farm more thing. That has changed. Ag tourism. You want to hold weddings on your farm. Okay, where are they going to be parking? Is providing a field for parking, is that agricultural use or is it a crop? You may want to, you may think it is, but the agency that's running your thing may not consider that. Do you need to remodernize your buildings? Is there a restriction on any buildings? You want to know these things and keep these in mind whenever you're negotiating anything with a land trust that you're selling a conservation easement. Simply put, it can hinder the next generation. So you want to have the option of putting agricultural things in. And a lot of, I think it is, does it make the land more affordable? Does it hamper the next generation? While I like to see farmland remaining open as an individual, as an advisor to a lot of farmers, I would tell them sometimes, unless you absolutely need the money, let the next generation think about selling their conservation rights. Or if you're afraid that when you're out walking with the kids and you fall over and dead of a heart attack, the first, boy, Dad's dead. Oh, I've got to do something. Hello, Joe Surveying? I'm coming into some land recently. Can you come out here and start surveying for plots? Oh, you didn't hear me about getting the property? Well, it's going to be as soon as I get Dad to the funeral home, but you know, he'll get there when he gets there. He's not in a rush now. I mean, if you're afraid your kids are going to sell the property and put it into plots and you can't, that just makes you can't sleep at night, sell the conservation rights. It does help preserve the farm. Okay, leases. You can lease the farm to your kids. One of the nice things about leases is that it locks up the property for those that are on the farm. For a lot of young couples that, you know, they got their kids and maybe their kids are just getting started and they're not sure how they want to split up the farmland yet. You know, most people, you know, below 60 or below 70, your greatest chance of death is from dying in a car wreck, probably even going home from here today. If you have a child on the farm and you got other siblings, is the estate going to have to be settled up? If the child that's on the farm is given a lease of 10 or 20 years on the farm, that gives them an opportunity to run the farm. They have access to the land. It is really important that the generation that is on the farm and has the land, controls the land. Okay, leasing to a new farmer. Leases should be completed by attorneys if they're multi-year. There's a lot of conditions to get there. Okay, sources of credit. Now, the best source of credit for the younger generation is marry a financially well-off spouse. If any of you remember about George Washington, what did he do? He inherited Mount Vernon from his brother, so he inherited the farm to get started, and then he got more farmland by marrying the richest widow in the colonies. Smart.
Are all of these pages on this?
Yes, this whole presentation is on there. So, a lot of times we have to, unfortunately, where are they going to get their money? They're going to have to get it from profits or financing provided by the older generation. If they're going to borrow credit, they're going to borrow cash, they have to have credit, and they need to have profits to pay it back. Joint ownership with gradual withdrawal is probably the easiest way to get credit rating to the younger generation and get assets over to them, and they can also use insurance. How do you use insurance? Well, we can use insurance, life insurance. Youngins can take a life insurance policy out on the old folks. When they pass away, they can use that money then to buy the assets of the older generation. Or they can take out a policy on the older generation that will be payable to their off-farm siblings for inheritance too. So, parents may want to take out a policy if they owe estate taxes to the state of New Jersey. And so lenders oftentimes require business partners take life insurance policies out on their partners so that they have money to buy the shares back from theirs. And I've seen lenders now loan money to mom and dad, but there's a couple young, daughter or son on the farm that's doing. They take life insurance policies out on the son or daughter because they're the ones that are going to be working and repaying that debt. And if something happens to them, the farm's going to have to be sold. But a lot of different options there. But what is the favorite saying of an insurance person?
You're going to live forever.
No. You need more insurance. So you have to be careful. What can you afford and what do you need? Okay, I keep hitting the wrong button. Okay, this is a web address where I have number of videos. I think there's close to 28 on there now. And these are farms that have gone through a farm transition. Each of them are about 6 to 8 minutes in length, and they're professionally done so that they give you something. There's also topics on there of what is a will, what is a trust, what is separate, fair but equal, and some different topics that are educational to this entire topic. That's at this web address, and that is on the stick that you have in your packet. Now, but the most difficult step, yes?
Change it too fast.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Did you say it was on the stick?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? Now, the most difficult step is at some point you have to stop procrastinating and set your plan in motion.
Right.
You have to decide and get moving. You did by coming here today. Don't let your momentum stop. Go home and talk with your family members, meet with your accountant, talk to other things, and we're going to have other people talking about who should be on a team. Talk to somebody in extension. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors that have gone through a transition. What do you want to ask them? What would you do differently?